Bring on in the panel and discuss what this trip will look like. CNN politics reporter, editor-at-large, Chris Cillizza, CNN military analyst, Colonel Cedric Leighton, and CNN political commentator, Errol Lewis. All right, so this is the second trip. It seems to be kind of shrouded, Errol, in a little bit of a mystery about what the agenda is, with whom, and at what time. It all centers around a legit meeting, the G20, but how do you see the stakes here?
Well, the stakes are very high. We do not know what principled realism means. That's the title that the administration has given to its foreign policy in some broad sense. We don't know what the president is going to do as far as translating what he has said as the need for better relationships with the Russians in order to fight ISIS. How does that translate into a face-to-face discussion? We know from his Oval Office conversation with the foreign minister that he feels a great deal of pressure because of these questions around the election. Well, what does that mean now? That pressure, if anything, has intensified since then. How will that manifest itself? Will he be transparent about it? What kind of conversation are we going to see him have about these very important domestic issues? And the fact that McMaster said he often will sort of just kind of freelance in these sort of settings doesn't give, you know, us a great deal of insight or, frankly, comfort that he's going to do something that is in keeping with a sort of an orderly, strategic process of advancing foreign policy. It may just be kind of the politics of the moment.
So, politics of the moment, Colonel, that leads us to North Korea. So this has now obviously taken center stage. This is what global leaders will have to be dealing with. Colonel, when we had you on yesterday, I know that you were hoping against hope that this would not be an intercontinental missile. Now it has been confirmed by the U.S. that it was. So now what?
Well, Allison, this is really the game changer that people have been waiting for, and with bated breath. So I think what we're seeing here is a situation where North Korea has basically put its cards on the table and said, these are the things that we're going to do. We have known that they're going to do this. It was just a question of time. Now the remaining question is, can they actually nuclearize this intercontinental ballistic missile? So with that, that is really the destabilizing factor for at least East Asia, obviously the Korean Peninsula, but it can also affect the relationships all around the world. So President Trump's challenge is going to be to really get China and Russia to help box in North Korea. But so far, there's basically no leverage because the Chinese want to keep North Korea exactly the way it is. They don't want a stream of refugees coming out of North Korea should that regime collapse. They don't want to see anything like a German-style reunification. And right now, it looks even less likely that they're going to be able to convince the Chinese or the Russians to go along with any kind of moderating force on the Korean Peninsula.
So, Chris, that then raises the issue of whether or not this missile changes the game, because to this point, we've had the Trump administration try to advance the posture on North Korea from where the Obama administration was. They ratcheted up the rhetoric, no more, no tolerance, no that. Then they came out with that terse little statement, we've said enough, we won't say anything else. So now the only thing that seems to have changed is they have a different munition, North Korea. But does that change the politics or the possibilities for what the United States can do to make good on its new tough talk?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the question. Errol, I thought, makes the point, which is what's different? What does saying the era of strategic patience is over actually mean from a strategic military perspective? Because at the moment, what we've done as it regards North Korea is talk quite tough, but they do not appear to be fazed by it, right? I mean, this is clearly a provocation, clearly timed around both our Independence Day as well as this G20 summit. And I don't know the answer to what Donald Trump will do once provoked. We know what he does once provoked sort of domestically. He punches back. That's his thing. I don't know what he'll do from a foreign policy perspective, Chris, because frankly, look, when you elect a guy who has not had any previous experience in elected office or in the military, first person ever, we don't really know. Donald Trump has not outlined and did not really outline beyond we're going to be tougher with them what he would do with North Korea. And so we don't have a policy per se. I'm not sure we get one the rest of this week, but I do think at some point if your brand is built on this idea that there was too much talking before, there was too much tolerance of this stuff before, there is somewhat of an onus on you to say, okay, we're going to do things differently. Well, what are those things we're going to do differently beyond just talk?
Well, there's an emergency meeting being called at the UN. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, tweeted this yesterday at 5 p.m. Spending my fourth in meetings all day, hashtag thanks North Korea. I mean, that's an interesting tone, sort of Trump-like, quite frankly.
Sure.
But what can she do?
Well, she can do what the U.S. always has committed to up until now, which is to sort of say diplomacy is our strongest weapon. They have missiles, we have diplomacy. We have sort of morality on our side. We have ethics on our side. The fact that this principled realism of this administration has sort of thrown aside human rights, you know, at a minimum, he sort of discards an important card that he could have played. So, I mean, yes, you'll have the Security Council. We'll hear all of the usual talk about the need to keep stability, keep a denuclearized region in place, and to have more discussion. But that's exactly what Trump said he wasn't going to do, that there wasn't going to be any more patience, there wasn't going to be any more talking. So it will be, if not an empty exercise, a very brief one, I would think.
But, you know, look, as the president continues his education curve, he said the same thing about health care. Actually, things don't change. He changes his reckoning of them as he has to come to grip with reality. So, Colonel, you know, on health care, the president said, well, it was more complicated than people thought. No, it's more complicated than he knew at the time. Similarly, you just had China and Russia come out and condemn the U.S. military exercises with South Korea. That's not showing the kind of progress that we hoped for in this situation, but it does show the reality. So as the reality here sinks in, you can talk all you want. North Korea is going to keep doing what it does. What are the potential options now with this meeting with Russia? They say North Korea will be on the table. Where can those talks go?
Chris, that's a great question. I think the real answer is going to be we have to recognize that China and Russia are in essence combining forces here. They've done that before, you know, go all the way back to the Korean War, and they obviously had combined forces at that time. For right now, what President Trump will need to do is he'll need to focus on how he can best leverage their abilities with North Korea and keep everything contained. What does that mean? Well, I think things like the military exercise, the anti-missile defense exercise that they held in South Korea, that is a start. Those are the kinds of things that in essence back up the rhetoric with force. That is unfortunately, I think, what President Trump is going to find he is confined to, and that will, I think, change his outlook and make him realize that in fact strategic politics, geostrategy is more complicated than he first realized.
And by the way, just quickly, the Colonel makes the right point, which is, and this is true on a number of domestic issues, and now true on foreign policies, that campaign promises made by Donald Trump don't often reflect governing realities. The idea that, well, we're just going to handle the North Korea thing, and they'll understand we're more serious because I'm Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. If there were simple solutions, other presidents would have taken them, right? I mean, these are not easy matters. It's like healthcare here stateside. If there was a simple conservative solution to solve healthcare, some conservative leader would have already proposed it. The reality of the situation is, rhetorically, you can talk about how we'll solve all these things, but there is a reason they have not been solved, because, particularly as it relates to North Korea, there are a number of geopolitical interests that simply do not align with ours. And we can't just make people do things that they don't believe is in their interest to do.
All right, panel, thank you.